Recording?
Yep.
I think so. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Office 365 Pulse. We have the whole team here today, which is super awesome. It's been such a long time. So I'm excited to have the time slot free again so we can all sync up and meet together. So I guess just like always, we will start with what's in development, then go on to what's rolling out, go out to what's launched, and then finally we'll do whatever's canceled. So let's see. Why don't you take us off, Tom? What's exciting about what's in development?
Sure. One is Outlook. See recipients auto reply messages when composing an email. Understand if someone inside your organization to whom you are sending an email has automatic replies turned on. Yeah, the earlier you get that in your email generation, the better. Because if you're thinking, oh, I need to let this person know XYZ, and you put their name out there and immediately you see the pop-up going, hey, this person's sending auto replies, and you know they're not going to be around for 2 weeks, that may change the entire concept of having to do that particular email. That's due to come out for everybody, and it's set for August of 2023. One more that I will also mention is Microsoft Stream, and I'm sure this is the new Stream because nothing's being done for old Stream. View and edit toggle mode. So this feature allows users with editing permissions on a video to toggle back and forth between view and edit mode when you're viewing a video. Normally it's going to be in view mode, so you don't have to do anything, on a normal basis to get this to happen. But if you do have access in edit mode, users with that permission can edit the video metadata, such as title, description, chapters, and transcripts. The view edit toggle is designed to prevent accidental edits to video metadata. So I think that's really nice. They're making it easier to be more descriptive on those things. And again, that too is going out to the entire spectrum. So commercial, GCC, GCC High, and DoD out in July. So it should be out in the next 2 weeks or so.
Awesome. How about you, Tamara? What are you liking this week?
There are so many things to choose from. Microsoft Teams joined Zoom-enabled meetings from Teams. I thought this was really interesting. If any organizer creates a Zoom, Google Meet, or any third-party meeting application from Outlook or OWA, meeting participants will be able to join that meeting from inside the Teams calendar. I think that was really smart on Microsoft's behalf.
I find it interesting if it has, because they go out of their way to say that it has to be created in Outlook or OWA to go through and do that. So it'd have to be someone who's using the Office suite or using ostensively Exchange Online, but not using Teams functionality. So I still awesome complete win, but interesting that it needs that caveat in order for it to work.
Right. And then also Microsoft Teams channel meeting invitation. So this feature allows channel meeting organizers the ability to share invites on personal calendars of all the channel members. I think this is great because people miss channel meetings so easily because it's not showing up on their Outlook calendar. So this will be a better way of doing it. And that's coming out in August also.
Cool.
Very cool. Well, I just have a couple, and then we can kind of pass it to Adam for the admin type updates. But there's two for Microsoft Teams. It's cross-cloud guest access and cross-cloud authenticated meetings. So this is really important if you're in the GCCH and DoD space, as you're going to want to be able to have these meetings. I mean, it works in other spaces as well, but that's where it's really been a missing element that people are waiting for. So those are both in development, coming out in September, which September will be here before you know it. And then another one that I thought that was really cool was, two more. I lied. I have two more. Migrating Google Forms through the M365 Admin Center. So if you want to go and be a Microsoft Forms user, you're going to be able to migrate your Google Forms. This is going to be especially important around education because I was always so confused why my children's teachers had a ton of Google Forms out there, but they were an Office 365 shop. So I think that's going to be big in that space for sure. And then the last one I have was the on-demand recordings for webinars. So an organizer can publish the recording of a webinar, and it will automatically send an email to attendees, and they will receive a link to watch the on-demand webinar. So I think that's a little great addition there. It's very nice to have type of addition. So Adam?
I increasingly appreciate that too.
Yeah.
I've gotten busier and busier and busier, as I'm sure I've gotten like more comfortable in my work role and what all that entails. But it's not that uncommon that like the more Planet does a pretty good job of doing informational, educational type sessions, both available for our customers, but also internally. So we do You Already Own It, which is always cool sessions that is, intended for our partners. We also have an internal learning one on the East Division called ETC, which is like East Technical Center or something like that, or training center. But it basically is like our own engineers teaching stuff to their peers of like, hey, I did a new cool thing, I want to tell you about it. And I increasingly find it difficult to be able to make those inside of my schedule. So a feature like this is absolutely incredible because it just makes it easier that I can go and make sure I get the information that I can consume it on my own. So happy to see that. And outside of that, I do think it's funny because I am, I guess, the nerdy admin of the group. Like all the ones I wanted to talk about, no one touched with a 10-foot pole. So, that's how it goes. So there's a couple things. We've talked about it before, but I think it's worth repeating just because it's on the list again. I also laugh. You can look at the feature ID to get an idea of like how long ago this feature was thought up by Microsoft. So to give you an idea, if you look at it, most of the feature IDs are in the 140,000-ish to 150,000-ish range is where we're at right now, because that's how long Microsoft has been going. This is a 90,000-ish feature, so it is old. It's been there for a while. But Microsoft continues to invest in the experience insight in the admin center. What this basically is kind of Microsoft trying to teach admins to fish on their own. So the experience insight center is going to basically continue to be developed that gives you stuff like the idea of giving you like help articles, idea of data usage inside of your tenant, areas for feedback or net promoter scores, help desk articles, things along those lines. So nice to see them continuing to update and invest in that. Basically, there's just a thing that say they value your patience and understanding. They're planning on rolling it out in December 2023. So they basically updated it with a new launch date because they've been working on this for a while. So excited to see that coming through. Two others that I think are worth doing on the compliance side. This I thought was really cool. They're adding a data lifecycle management simulation mode. They're adding this to the US government clouds. The idea is basically if you're going through and doing stuff with data lifecycle management, one of the most common ways you do that is through data classification with sensitive labels. So you can go in and say, hey, I'm a hospital. I'm going to go and I'm going to look for HIPAA sensitive content, or I'm going to go in and look for credit card information if I need to be FINRA or PII, whatever it is. But oftentimes you don't know the implications of doing that till you do it. You're going in, you're creating these policies and hoping for the best. And especially if you're talking about a large deployed production environment, you can suddenly come in the next day with everything suddenly is encrypted and it's a lot harder to work. So the idea is they're basically giving you the ability to simulate what that deployment would look like, where it is going to go through the process of if it was applying the labels, but not actually apply the labels, just tell you where it would go through and apply and give the admins a report on it. This is actually really cool because if I'm going to be a consultant to a customer and they are telling me that they want to be secure, I'm not dumb, so the advice I'm going to give them is the one that makes them the most secure if they're wanting to go down that route to do it. But chances are the real way to do that if you're doing sensitive labels is to imply document layer encryption to documents, which is a wonderful feature to have. That's done in the sensitivity labels themselves. But how they do document layer encryption in M365 on the document layer is they do it by permissions, by role, like everything's role-based access control. And one of the roles that you cannot do for the most part is, someone external. So the end result is you go through and encrypt all these documents inside of your system. And if you ever need to share them external, the fact that there is now a label on the document is a big issue because you basically have to remove the label before you can share it externally. So for companies that go through and make this decision and suddenly find a third of their documents now have labels on them, that can be a very disruptive thing to happen in their work pattern. So I thought this simulation was cool. I hadn't even thought about it before, but the fact that they're going through and doing that is super, super cool. I have a couple more to do, but I'm going to check. Does anyone else have anything they like on rolling out before I just keep talking?
I'm going to throw one out here, and it's pretty minor, but I just know there's going to be that one person who goes, I don't like this, make it stop. And that's SharePoint Visual Refresh.
It's a delighter.
We are introducing updates to the Microsoft Fluent Visual Styling of the SharePoint platform that will improve the experience across the SharePoint authoring experience in Microsoft Syntax. Aligning with the latest Microsoft Fluent design system principles includes updated icons with softer edges, a cooler gray palette, and more rounded corners on various UI controls. I remember one time when we did a change internally to do theming, and our strategic communications department put all these color themes out there and they rolled it out. And immediately we had one or two key people who were like, this is horrible. This is bad. You didn't think this through. You need to change it. And I'm like, oh, please don't do this. I just don't want to deal with this.
So you can just reply and say, but it's cooler gray.
Yes, it's cooler gray.
It's a cooler gray palette.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. That is coming out to worldwide. All you government cloud people, you get to see how we handle it first. And that is supposed to be out this month. So, Adam, continue on with your geeky nerdiness.
All right, so 3 of them fall in together under the purview compliance, communication compliance bandwagon. We've talked about this a lot. Communication compliance is basically Microsoft's catch-all mechanism for the day-to-day communication of people inside of the organization, right? In general, even though this feels a little big brothery, I think overall this is good because of the work for home movement we're doing. So 3 updates there that I think are worth mentioning. One, leverage advanced classification for the US government clouds. The advanced classification deals with a whole school of information that Microsoft considers protected. So this is usernames and passwords. This is PII data by default, some of the stuff like that. Basically what this update's doing is now in government clouds, if you have this turned on and you have people like passing usernames and passwords in plain text in Teams, it will alert on that, which like it's probably somewhat innocuous if you do that, but that's probably not best practices and what you should be doing. You should probably have a more secure way to deliver that information. So we'll go through and look for this. Similar thing if someone's sharing, personal information of people in a way that like customers that they probably shouldn't, it will detect some of that stuff to just remind you, hey, this may not be in best practices or what you're wanting to do. So cool to see that. Second one along those lines, I thought this one was actually super cool. Detect managerial harassment. This is, again, I think the plus side of going through the communication compliance. Again, in a work from home environment, like Planet is 100% remote. Everyone on my team works from their house. No one goes into an office. But so all of our communications are through the Microsoft tools for the most part. It's now going to do stuff like detect the transcripts of Teams communications. It'll go through and look at post meetings and stuff to look for harassment for managers. If you basically have a manager who's being a douche or being an asshole to their employees and being demeaning and stuff like that, you'll basically they have developed algorithms for look for that type of behavior. Because again, if I was the owner of a company and one of my midline managers was doing something that could get me sued, I'd probably want to know about it. So again, I see this as a good thing. And again, I also see this as a protection. Like we've probably all had managers that we didn't necessarily get along with, and probably all had managers that said stuff that probably they shouldn't be saying. So in a work from home environment, I see this as nothing but a good thing for Microsoft, just trying to protect the little guy. And in theory, like they're doing this to try to arm people so that they can make changes and make adjustments and stuff. So happy to see that. A final one under that umbrella was user scoping of RBAC roles inside of this. And the idea is pretty simple. Let's say you're a multinational company and you have German speakers and Spanish speakers and English speakers and Japanese speakers. Well, you probably need someone who can speak German, being the person reviewing the conversations, like when it has alerts related to someone in German. So you can basically scope different things related to communication compliance to different users based off of roles. So again, I have an office in Japan. A lot of their communication is Japan. I'm gonna have someone from HR in Japan being the person that's reviewing that information, not someone from HR in the US that has no idea what's going on. So it's cool to see that. And then the final thing that I'll mention that I thought was kind of cool, this is not a super admin-y one, but it's just kind of nerdy and I think it's fun. And I've actually seen this kind of start going through before. So now if you are with someone inside of their organization or you have access to their tenant, so you're essentially viewing it as a member of their tenant, and they have an out of office message up, if you start typing them an email in Outlook, or this also works in Teams, it will tell you that they have an out of office message up and tell you what it is. So just kind of cool, again, kind of nerdy. So If I'm going to send Jen a message and be like, hey, Jen, you're awesome, let's get lunch, and she's out of the office because she's on a cruise, I'll actually see that and be like, okay, I need to ask Jen to lunch next week. And
I wish.
yeah, just seeing that without having to waste sending out an email. I've actually seen this for Teams and some stuff in Outlook. In our tenant, we already have this feature coming through. It's just kind of a nerdy, cool thing. I like that they added it. So that's all I
Awesome.
got.
Anyone else on anything in development?
Nope, I'm ready for rolling out.
All right. Well, I've got one for in development. That's the Microsoft 365 app. So view your Microsoft Planner, Plans, and Microsoft To-Do list in the Microsoft 365 homepage. So just some more changes that are there. But if you've recently accessed your plan or your list, it's going to appear in that quick access list to help you get back to it easily. So I always think it's good to note things that are changing on homepages because that kind of freaks people out if something changes on that. So yeah, let's go to rolling out now. How about you, Tom? Take us away.
Sure. First of all, I'd just like to say, Adam, it is so nice to have you back handling geeky stuff. Otherwise, I just had to read it to people, and that just doesn't have the same effect. The one that I wanted to point out, because it kind of surprised me the other day and bit me when I was telling somebody, follow the directions I sent you. And like, but I can't, I don't have this. I'm like, yes, you do. And I went in and like, no, you really don't anymore. And that is the OneDrive updated file sharing experience. And this actually pertains to, appears when you share files in Teams, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive, SharePoint, Stream, OneNote, Planner, and many other applications. They basically changed the sharing dialog. It does, they said, to have a simpler look and feel, and I must admit, it does look better. But when you've told somebody, well, go here, scroll to the bottom where it says advanced permissions, you'll get down there, and they're like, I don't have advanced permissions. Like, you do too, you're an owner of the site, just scroll all the way down. And when they said, well, go take a look, and all of a sudden it pops up with this whole different screen, I'm like, ooh, sorry, my bad. But it does look different. I think it looks better. But just keep in mind, if you've got people who are used to sharing things and seeing things in a certain way, this particular change is rolling out and they may go, hey, this looks really different. So just be prepared to that. It is coming to all the tenants. And again, it has been out to a number of tenants already.
It has completely messed with my muscle memory because I realized that I've got a certain flow of clicks that I was doing when I was sharing things a certain way. And I noticed today, I'm like, oh, different.
Doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
I do like the clear copied link notice whenever you go through and do that, though, because I would do that fairly often if I was just going through to share a file with someone where it's like, I think I'd shared it with them before, but I wasn't sure. Going in and resharing with them doesn't necessarily make sense. I'd always go and copy the link. And before, you'd never have an idea if you like, I'd hit copy link and be like, okay, I'm good, and like tab out of it, and copy link would bring you to a page to copy the link before. Now it actually gives you clear confirmation. I will take that as a win.
Awesome. Tamara, what do you have in rolling out that you like?
Oh, there are a couple things. Power BI, the Power BI content in Microsoft 365 Graph. So this integration gives you the option to actively interact with and view your Power BI content. Now, your Power BI content can be seen through recommended content within the Office Hub and search on office.com, SharePoint Online, and Bing at Work. You'll also be able to see the actions taken on Power BI contacts, such as who viewed it, edited it, shared the content with you. Now, the public preview is available now, but that is just available for worldwide. So, none of the higher environments. Also, Microsoft or SharePoint Microsoft list. Could we get any more product names in there? Flows.
I'm about to say it starts with flow, so sure.
Yeah, and then flows. Flows packaged into a custom list template. So expand your organizational list template by packaging Power Automate flows into them. So I think this is interesting, especially for people who are afraid to dip their toes in the Power Platform water. I think this will be hey, first one's free. kind of thing.
Well, it's just nice too if you've got like this, project management template that you want. And one of the common things people want is, hey, when a new document is entered, I want to be notified. Well, if you can build that notification Power Automate workflow into it, you know that everybody's going to get that same Power Automate when they actually use this particular template. I think that's a really good thing.
Or notify a person when they get assigned a task, because that's not
That
something
also.
you should keep a secret.
Totally correct.
What do you got, Jen?
Not too much. So automatically recognizing standard objects and images. So I think that's a good one. So SharePoint syntax image tagging. So making some improvements there for how you can do that with images. And then Microsoft.
You want to do the? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, you want to do the other syntax one as well, just for context?
Oh yeah. OCR for SharePoint and OneDrive. So optical character recognition. So
getting text out of pictures, basically.
Yeah, text out of pictures through Microsoft Search. So that can be really
it's
good.
Pay as you go. I don't know how I feel about that.
Well,
looking at the price
I mean,
that they were charging for syntax before, though.
Yeah, they're gonna. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're having to use the compute power of it, but like, I think of a company like Planet. So Jen, we are good and we have policies that you should be using your OneDrive for work. How much bullshit personal stuff do you think exists across Planet OneDrives? I don't want to be paying OCR to image recognize someone's vacation, which is, I feel like, what would happen with this,
Yeah, but I think that's not letting the technology solve a
fair
personnel problem.
I agree, but I think that is a very common problem regardless of the platform, just in the modern
when
cloud.
They have the syntax image tagging, if you notice a bunch of beach pictures, then you can address it that way, I guess.
See a whole bunch of alcohol names. I don't think they should have those pictures yet.
You got metadata coming up. It's just bikini, 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 bikini.
Oh my.
I'll be very short on mine just because I looked at launch.
I have one more.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have one more.
Sorry.
This is Apple CarPlay. So if you're using Microsoft Teams, making calls through your speed dial and call history is going to now be possible on CarPlay. So anything they can do to make it easier to use CarPlay is a win. So
yeah, I just don't think you should be doing that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
it's no different than a phone call.
Yeah.
Think of how many people do phone calls from the road.
Yeah, I don't think that's such a good idea either.
If you're using it hands-free.
Yeah, so San Antonio has a law that like you can do phone calls if you're doing hands-free, and I cannot tell you the number of people that I drive by that are just holding their phone up in front of them, talking with one hand while driving. It's just like, oh god.
No. Most of the time when I'm using it in the car, I'm usually the passenger, so it's not always the driver that's the one calling in remotely. But
and honestly, if you have your phone connected to your car, it's not too much of a distraction to turn it on and have a conversation. Like, as long as it's easy to answer and stuff like that. But anyways, I was saying I'm gonna be super quick because I looked at launched, and launched is like 90 compliance admin things.
Launched is all Adam.
so I will only say one in here that I thought was kind of cool. That was worth us going through and listing, and this harpens back to my Exchange admin days. So this is short on information, but it says Microsoft Defender for 365. They're updating DMARC policy handling. They say we are working on improvements to the way that DMARC policy reject/quarantine handling is implemented within both customer and enterprise services. So without getting too nerdy, DMARC is essentially the third iteration of email security. It combines what you'd think of traditionally as SPF, which is like the SPF is you create a DNS record to say these are the servers I send mail from. DKIM, domain key identified mail, is the second one. That's like putting a wax seal on the outside of your email that you send out. And DMARC is essentially a combination of the other one. The reason I think this is cool, we'll see more details as it comes out. Technically speaking, if you're really processing DMARC correctly, when you set your SPF record, you can also set, based off of how you're doing the record, what you tell people that you want to do. So you can say, like, if you get a message from me and it's not from these servers, just reject it. Don't accept it at all. Like just outright reject it. You can say, okay, well, you can accept it and just, do your normal filter. And you can say, well, I want to be notified when it comes to, there's several different things you can do that, like, technically, as the person creating the record, you can tell others how you want them to behave with your mail. That unless you were running your own mail server, that's not really being handled right now. Technically speaking, there are subsettings if you dig into the policy options of Exchange Online Protection that you can do a little bit of this with SPF, but the fact that they're giving more options around here technically is going to give you a little bit more of a custom experience. Like if you had your Exchange server, with a lot of the large partners we work with, they had their own Exchange server for 20 years and are now going away from that to go into 365. So I see this as a feature that maybe not a ton of people will use, but organizations that have been around for a long time will see this as features coming back that they always previously had. So that's good.
Awesome. Well, when it comes to launch, I don't have anything. It's the Adam show. But before we do that, Tamara or Tom, do you guys have anything?
I will yield my time to the gentleman from Texas.
Take it away, Adam.
I won't go too crazy here because this is all stuff we've probably talked a little bit about before. But just so you know, there are tons of updates to the insider risk management subset of the compliance portal, the Purview compliance portal. Again, insider risk management, the stuff we talked about before, that's using communication compliance and stuff like that to look for stuff internally. They're basically going to be able to do a whole bunch of stuff that allows you to get through some of the noise and start getting through stuff that really makes sense. Some cool examples of this, they're going to actually give you some exclusions for site URL and keyword, sensitive information types, and file path exclusions. So you can go in and say, hey, look, I don't need you to notify me on anything that may be sketchy related to these websites. And it may be like, okay, if you're going in, I know my partner, I know my company is using this website that we do from a partner that, there's sensitive information that's talked about on there, but like that's approved. Our CISO has already said it's okay. We have it did. You don't need to notify me on that. Doing stuff like that to make the information that you are being given as an admin more meaningful to you. And just in general, I mean, again, I talked about it previously, but I always like seeing them place development and resources around this type of stuff, because this is some of the harder technical solutions to figure out. And to me, this is one of the real differentiators you're getting. Whenever you're going through and doing surface level decisions, Google and Microsoft and whoever all have email, they all have file share, and they all have video chat. When you start specifically getting into some of these more advanced, technically heavy solutions, Microsoft is really starting to distinguish themselves on some of the admin level of controls and protections that they are giving you. Again, if I was a small business owner, having something like Office 365 where I know essentially I have Big Brother in a way automated on the computer watching out for my ass, so I make sure that something's not happening that shouldn't be, that is actually a wonderful thing. And so many of our partners are companies that, sub 100 users that they have the semblance of stuff together, but they probably don't have HR department fleshed out in the same way a 10,000 person organization would. So all of these tools that Microsoft are developing is really putting more power and protections to the average consumer, and really enabling specifically the small and medium-sized business owners that maybe don't have as mature of offerings through tools that, again, like this goes back to the core of what Planet talks about. This is you already own it stuff. This is stuff that the customer is getting that they're probably not utilizing today, that really adds a ton of value, that if you went for a third-party solution to find this, I'm sure would be tens of thousands of dollars that you're just getting in addition for free for what you already have. So love to see all those updates. If you care specifically about what it is, take a look at either the newsletter that we post out. Jen will post a wonderful list on LinkedIn like she always does. You can go in and find the specifics, but a whole bunch of stuff related to insider risk management.
Awesome. Anything else?
I'm good.
Nope. All right. Well, then we will wrap it up with canceled. We have 2 canceled this week. The Mixchange, the Microsoft Exchange cross-tenant SMTP domain sharing in private preview. This is being postponed indefinitely. So usually when we see something postponed indefinitely during a private preview, that means they've either gotten what they needed to out of their private preview. And so we'll usually see it come back in another form or not come back at all based on the findings of the preview. This is really going to be something that affects people in mergers and acquisitions and different things like that when you're trying to merge things. So we'll kind of just have to wait and see where that lands. And then also Microsoft Teams see multiple participants and shared content preview in the presenter window when screen sharing. And so this is also being postponed. And this was one that was coming out to, I think, all the environments again. And this is one when you were screen sharing, the presenter window would now show up to 4 meeting participants, active speakers, and the hands that are raised. And then meeting notifications are surfaced to the central area of the screen for easier awareness and consistent windowing behavior. Jen Mason's personal opinion is that being a presenter in Teams is still not 100%. It's hard. There's still some things that I'd love to see. So while this feature is going away, I know I'm not the only one that has that opinion. So I'm sure we'll see that experience continue to evolve and have different changes to it. So that's those are the updates. Those are the canceled. So I know we're getting into conference season. So Inspire is coming out, and that's usually a moment with Microsoft. So we'll have to see. We might get a big rush of updates loaded to the roadmap in the next week or so, but we shall see. But that's all, folks. So we'll see you next week with another round of updates.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.